Welcome one and all. Age of Sigmar is back on the menu. It's been a couple of months since the last Age of Sigmar tournament. Been plenty of other games in the meantime, but the sons of BEHEMAT are ready to take to the battlefield. The first time I've ever used this army, 0 practice games, 0 experience with them. I've played against them a couple of times, so I'm somewhat familiar with them, and I have used a Mega Gargant as an ally once or twice, so I'm not totally unfamiliar with them. And this tournament is Regicide in the Realm, which took place over this weekend at the TSN Arena in Nottingham. And 2,000 points, as standard, 5 games. And the standard scoring, there's also a bonus prize available at this event for the player who kills the most enemy generals and also has their own general killed. So the theme of the day is plenty of regicide going on, lots of rulers going to be killed. As you can see from this beautiful video thumbnail that I've got up on the screen right now, I have got nice big round bases to slot my square-based giants into, since some of them were originally made for Kings of War, and I then realised, you know what, I'm part way to having a very tentacly and disgusting Sons of BEHEMAT army, so why not just put them in larger round bases and then make some mini gargants to go with them. So you can also see that I've got signs on their bases to let my opponent know which of the mega gargants I'm using, and I'll take you through my list now while we're still looking at the thumbnail, because I think that's going to be the easiest. So we have got a Kraken Eater, we've got another Kraken Eater, and we've got King Brod. Those are the 3 Mega Gargants, and then we've got 3 Man Crusher Gargants separately, not as a full unit, and that's it. 6 models. My movement phases are not going to be very difficult, and in terms of my battalions, I've got the Battle Regiment, which contains the 3 Man Crushers, and the Kraken Eater with the Arcane Tome, which is the one in the centre there. You can see that one has a little scroll on its pole, so that represents the Arcane Tome. And then the other battalion is Bosses of the Stomp, which contains the other Kraken Eater, the one on the left there, as my general, and King Brod. So it's 3 drops in total, so maybe I'll actually get to choose who goes first occasionally. That would be nice, wouldn't it? Be a bit unusual after I usually play the Stormcast with some obscene amount of drops, like 11, for instance. So, the Kraken Eater General, he's quite kitted out, so what does he have? He's got the command trait Rabble Rouser, and the artifact of power, the Amber Bone Totem. So what do those things do? Well, he gets to run and charge, which is nice. So he's not the only thing in the army that can do that. The Man Crusher Gargants can also do that while they're within range of the Mega Gargants as well. They can also run and charge, if they want to. Just one Man Crusher Gargant isn't that big of a threat on its own, so they might not actually want to get into combat anyway. But the General certainly will, so he can run and charge. And he's also got an 18-inch +1 to charge aura, which is very nice. So extra charge distance, and I think that combines nicely with King Brod, who has prayers. He's got 3, and they're all just army-wide prayers. If you succeed with it, it just affects every model, every Sons of BEHEMAT unit in the army, regardless of where they are. And one of those gives +2 to movement to everybody. So potential to run and charge and get extra movement seems like a good combo to me, with the +1 to charges as well. His other prayers, he can also add Rend to the big main weapon of the Gargants, which is nice, because mostly across the army there's lots and lots of Rend 2, but not much else. So if you come up against something that's really stacking up those saves and you want to get that extra bit of Rend, you'd want that prayer, and his other one heals everybody in the army as well. So again, later in the game when everyone's taking damage, that can be very useful. So he seems like a very, very handy thing to have in the army. And all the lists I was toying with beforehand ended up containing him, because he just seems so useful. And I am going to come up against things that have a lot of armour, so I'm going to want the option to put Rend on everybody. There are going to be times I'm taking damage and I want to heal everybody, and there are going to be times I want to get to the enemy faster, so I want that extra movement. And he's not even that much more expensive than a Gargant. The only issue you run into when building a list with this army is not so much that things are too expensive, it's that the points don't line up perfectly to get close to 2,000 points. So you might find that you're 10 points over with the 4 Mega Gargants that you actually want to put in your list. So you have to compromise a bit. And Brod is 550. So he's obviously just more than a quarter. The Kraken Eater is only 490. So you could make an army of just Kraken Eaters if you wanted. And the Man Crusher Gargants are 150 each. So my entire list comes to 1980. So I might occasionally get my Triumph, which is inspired. And my grand strategy is take what's theirs, so I want to have more of my units in enemy territory than my enemy has, but I'm not holding out too much hope of getting that, because I don't have that many units, as you can see, and most of the time I'm going to be camping on objectives, probably. And some of them, if I've got home objectives, for example, I can just leave one of the mini Gargants back to guard those, which is why I've put them in 3 separate units. Because if I was running 4 Mega Gargants and I really wanted to stay back and defend an objective, that's a really significant chunk of points that you're just leaving out of the game there. So, let's have a look at the first battle plan. The Nidus Paths, and you can see Mr. Giant Orange Arrow appeared on screen now. So, you can see the Nidus Paths there, A and B. You can teleport between them, following the usual teleport guidelines, so wholly within 6 of the teleport point 9 inches away from the enemy. And there are 4 objectives, one of which is in your own territory, 2 on the border, and 1 in enemy territory. Now, the territory that objectives are located in is mostly important for certain battle tactics that require you to use a hero, for example, to take an objective that's wholly outside your territory. So in a scenario like this, you only have one of those that's eligible for that particular battle tactic. And a lot of the battle tactics do require Galatian champions, of course, in this season, and Gargants obviously don't have any, because they're small, wimpy, pathetic things, not giant, lumbering beasts. So I don't have any of those, so there's 4 of the book battle tactics from the General's Handbook that I can't do. But I do have some battle tactics in the Sons of BEHEMAT book that I can use. So I'll talk through those when they come up. And the Kraken Eaters also have the ability to kick objectives, which is handy. So if, for example, I wanted to bring this objective closer to another one, I could be on here in my hero phase and kick it 2d6, which is potentially handy. It can be useful to get the objectives closer together, less space to guard them, or further apart if the enemy want to be compact. And you can also kick them into your own territory for a battle tactic. So if it's outside your territory and you kick it in, that is one of the battle tactics you can use. And in the first round, I'll just bring up the list of my first round opponent. Right here, we have got, so, Slaves to Darkness, and it is the host of the Everchosen. There is a Chaos Lord on Karkadrak, which is, let's see if we can actually find a picture of it. There he is. So, it's quite a tough, fighty little character there. We've also got, let's see, what does that guy have actually? So it's the General, Mark of Khorne. So Mark of Khorne makes things better at fighting somehow. Whereas if you Nurgle, you're harder to hurt. And is it Slanesh or Tzeentch where there's negatives on you shooting against them? Something like that. They all give you a small bonus anyway, but the usual one people go with, you see a lot of Nurgle. So Nurgle Chosen in particular, I've seen a lot of, because it's just so hard to wound them and they have a lot of wounds, so that seems like a really good combo. So a lot of people use that. We've got a Chaos Sorcerer Lord in this army somewhere, lurking, might be that one. That'll be the Gaunt Summoner on a Disc of Tzeentch actually, so there's that one, and there's a regular Sorcerer Lord, which may be that one. There's a big unit of Chaos Warriors here. They're Nurgle Chaos Warriors. They're going to be tougher to wound than usual. And that's a big old unit there. 420 points worth, so that is quite dangerous. There's a unit of Blissbarb archers in here somewhere, and I think they're there behind the Chaos Warriors. Don't know if you can see them there, they're just poking out there. So I think those are allies, so they're just a little shooty unit, gives them a bit of shooting. There is a unit of Chosen, which is here. It's just the 5 Chosen, so not the massive units you sometimes see of them. And the Chosen have the Mark of Slaanesh, not Nurgle, which is what I normally see. And there's a big old unit of Chaos Knights as well, so that's 440 points with the Chaos Knights there. So that's very, very scary, you don't want to get charged by them. And there's also a unit of Marauder Horsemen there at the back, who are just cheap, bit of a chaff unit. They can hold an objective or two during the game when required. So, the kind of setup I've gone with, I have put out a couple of my mini Gargants, the Man Crushers, out in front. And obviously this is the first ever game I've played with the Sons of BEHEMAT. So I'm just trying a few things out, trying out the old bait, see if I can dangle this juicy Man Crusher Gargant on the end of my rod and see if it can entice anyone in to kill it, and then of course they get furiously countercharged by 1 or 2 Mega Gargants. I've put my Spellcaster, my Arcane Tome Gargant in the centre, I've got King Brod over on the right, and my General with the run and charge on the left. So I'm quite confident that if I can get 2 Mega Gargants into this big blob of Chaos Warriors, that I can deal with them. They are Nurgle though, so it's by no means a guarantee. But still, I've got a lot of wounds and I can dish out a decent number of wounds as well. I've got this mini Man Crusher at the back here because I don't want anyone going through the Nidus path, which is there. I don't want them popping up behind me, so he's just staying there to make sure no one can use it. So he may end up staying there the whole game and just holding this objective by dipping his toe on it. Because I don't know if I mentioned, I'm using the Taker tribe, which means that my Man Crusher Gargants are worth 15 on objectives, which is quite significant, and it also adds +5 to my Kraken Eaters as well. So they start off worth 25, which is the same as King Brod. So very easy to hold objectives with any of these guys. So immediately at the start of the game, I'm going to try and desecrate some lands, because that's technically enemy territory. My opponent has just not set up anyone down here, so that's just a nice easy one to start the game, and it's one I can actually do because you don't need Galatian champions for it. So I'm just going to desecrate that land, have one of my models near it. Fun times for all, and there's not much else going on. In the first turn, all I did was just move up onto objectives, as you can see. So this one dips its toe in. I chose to go first, by the way, if I didn't mention that. So all I've done is just moved up onto objectives and got in range to attack anyone that comes in to take these juicy bits of bait. In my opponent's first turn, he also goes for desecrating of lands and wants to desecrate this. And now the tower currently has 15 of this Gargant on it, so that means 15 Chaos Warriors would have to get in range if they want to even equal it, so there need to be 16 of them to take it. I put Unbinding, what's it even called? The heroic action that allows you to unbind like a wizard for the turn. So I put it on him because he was in range of one of the wizards. You can see the Chaos Warriors have made their way up towards this tower. Now I believe they actually ran, which means that because they didn't auto-run, they didn't roll very high, so they end up not actually getting in range to take this tower off me. So they're going to have to hope that the archers kill this guy with shooting, which is definitely not a guarantee. So they took a risk there. They decided not to use a command point auto-run, which could have probably got 16 of them around the tower, or they could have not run and then maybe charged him. Chaos Warriors, the Chaos Knights, should I say, are going out over this way. So I put all-out defense on the Man Crusher, which he can receive because there's a Mega Gargant just off-camera further down here, who's in range to apply that. And then he gets shot a bit, takes 7 wounds. So it doesn't die, so my opponent only scores the 1 point. because not able to get the battle tactic by desecrating this tower. So that's a good start for me. And there you can see this guy was the one that was able to put the command on him, my general. And nothing too significant happened with the spell casting in this turn. I've got all the objectives apart from this one, so that's why my opponent was only able to score the 1 point. So very pleased with this so far. And next round, my opponent wins the priority roll and elects to get a double turn out of it and chooses gaining momentum. So pick an enemy unit and hold more objectives than I do at the end of the round. So gaining momentum, picking this Man Crusher Gargant, very easy, definitely going to kill that. He's not got that many wounds. Chaos Warriors is just going to go and eat him. And then he'll also have to take this objective off me as well with the Chaos Knights who move up within range. I actually use a command point to, let me show you where he was, so I'll go back a bit. He was actually in the middle, this guy. What I didn't want to happen, I didn't want the Chaos Knights to charge him and then pile in, fight King Brod, and deny me the ability to then charge them. So whether that's a wise thing to do, I don't know. Because obviously not using this army before, looking back on it now, what I'm thinking is maybe, if I'm redeploying him, bring him closer to King Brod, so King Brod can actually fight. Because the more you're fighting, the more damage you're dishing out, but then the more wounds you're taking, you're slowly being whittled away, so I would need much more experience with the army before deciding whether that's the best move. What I intend to do, though, is just redeploy closer to them, so that when they charge in, they're just that sort of area, so they can't possibly pile in and hit King Brod, and the next turn I'll be able to charge them. And I'll also, maybe I could bring a second one over here if I feel the need, but I am still eyeing up 2 of them into the Chaos Warriors, especially because they're likely to kill him. So let's go back to where we were. So Chaos Warriors getting ready for that charge, the Knights get into this one. And I do put all out defense just to give him a chance, but nope, doesn't help, he's dead. And my monstrous rampages, you can see I used a roar there. I don't always bother putting the token down for it, but this one just gets killed quite easily by all those Chaos Warriors. You can see the Blissbarb Archers, the Sorcerer, and the Chosen behind there. So, I've lost 2 mini Gargants, but all the big lads are still up. So my opponent does score 5 for that round, is able to hold these 3 objectives now. So it's time for me to take them back. There's also an endless spell down here, which is slightly limiting where my general can attack, but obviously I can just go round it. So, on my turn, I've got both of these Gargants into the Chaos Warriors, and lots of them are already dead, as you can see. Big old pile of dead Chaos Warriors. So the 2 Kraken Eaters just tearing their way through those Chaos Warriors, and the Blissbarb Archers. So this one went into the Chaos Warriors, killed loads, this one went in, and since it was within 3 inches of the Blissbarb Archers, was able to then target them, and got rid of them. So that's nice. King Brod went into the Chaos Knights, not because I think he'll kill them all in one go, but because I want to deny them a charge bonus, which they're much better when they charge, so I'd much rather hit them on my terms. So that's probably another valid reason for keeping the Mini Gargant up there, so that they can't pile in and have their charge bonus against King Brod, who you can see has also got all out defense played on him, because he's on his own, and he just wants to stay alive and slowly whittle down the Knights without their charge bonus. In the War of Attrition, I think he will win that. Up here, the Chaos Warriors not having a good time, but there are some wounds being dished back. You can see I'm using these Caradron Overlord dice to mark wounds, to mark how many wounds the unit has taken. And there we go, so I'm at 5 points again, after I cashed in eye for an eye, and I was able to take out the Blissbarb Archers. So, in the next round, and I get the next turn, so I've got the double now, and you can see I've actually gone for gaining momentum there, so I have to kill an enemy unit, and have more objectives than the enemy at the end of it. So I think I chose the Chaos Warriors because there's only about 5 left, and you can see all out defense has been used on this guy, and yeah, they all get eaten. So that's nice. Because I think I was so confident that I probably went with King Brod first down here and killed some of the knights, so they were actually able to attack this guy, so that's why all our defense was played on him, and then they both take them all down. So all the Chaos Warriors, that massive unit, are dead. Just got to worry about the Chosen now, but I'm not that scared of only 5 Chosen when I've got 2 Kraken Eaters here, still relatively healthy. This one has, how many has he taken there? 15. So he's still got 20 wounds left. So they're not damaged enough yet. King Brod in a similar position, but he actually starts with even more wounds. So he's doing the work over there. Doing very well. So I'm at 5 points again. So keeping that lead intact. And into my opponent's turn now. And you can see the Chosen are coming in. And I think the battle tactic is met immediately. It must be one of the Chaos specific ones. I can't remember what it was, but it was just a really easy auto battle tactic. So I've put the dice there to show that it was already accomplished. Or it may well have been put a hero on an objective or something. Something just automatic, so that's why the dice there is there, because it can't possibly fail. These knights are continuing to fight King Brod. And they're slowly getting whittled down. Brod getting whittled down slower than them. And up here, the Chosen steam into this Mega Gargant, this Kraken Eater, who puts all-out defense. And all-out defense is... it's very handy if you're a Gargant, because you've got so many wounds. Anything that makes it harder to take those wounds off is obviously a bonus, because you are sticking around for a while, so you might as well make it as long as possible. So anytime you have a way to build up your save, so you've got to have strategic use of Finest Hour with your Gargants, because obviously all the Mega Gargants can use it once during the game. So you want to use that when you most need it. You've also got Mystic Shield when you've got the Arcane Tome as well, so I've been attempting to cast that in each of my turns. It doesn't always work though. He's only just obviously a standard spellcaster with that tome, and the enemy sometimes have bonuses, so they can definitely try to dispel it, or unbind, should I say. So yeah, anytime you can get your saves up, do it. King Brod, the wounds are building up on him now. He's up to 20 now, but he's still got another 20 to go, so still pretty pleased with that situation. And the Chosen are going to get whomped a bit. They take some casualties. So my opponent is able to pick up 3 points for the round with the easy battle tactic and holding 1 objective. I think I get first crack in the next round, and my Gargants pick this one's mine I put on my general with the Chosen, so he has to kill that unit. And he does finish them off. And the Knights get finished off as well by King Brod. So looking very, very healthy. It's pretty much game over at this point. Got another 5, so I've been scoring big every round. My opponent hasn't been. In this round, can only really score 1 point for just holding that objective. Doesn't have anything left to kill me with particularly. And then in the next round, can't do too much. King Brod kills that sorcerer eventually, and the Marauder Horsemen come down there to try and shoot him to death, but they can't manage it. I think they do have a small shooting attack, the Horsemen. Or did they shoot him and then charge him? That could be what happened. So they charge him as well, but then they get killed. So yeah, I think he only had to use his main weapon attacks as well. He didn't even get to his other weapons. So, and there's the character that's there. Is that the other sorcerer? That'll be the one on the disc. So my opponent is able to get 1 more point in the final round. And in the final round I get another 3 because there's no battle tactics I can do. So I attempt Splat, which is kill an enemy hero with throwing rocks. And the only one that doesn't have that is King Brod. Everyone else can throw a rock of some kind. So it's worth trying because you have to kill a hero that way, but can't do it. Doesn't work. The rocks aren't very reliable, so I don't succeed with that. So I got 4 battle tactics, picked up 3 in that round, and then got 3 for my grand strategy, which was take what's theirs, because I don't actually know if there's a picture of it, because all I had to do was send the Man Crusher Gargant from the bottom left. Let's see if there's actually any pictures of him recently, because he's been totally forgotten in this game. When was the last time he was actually photographed? He's still alive, he's just guarding the Nidus path in the bottom left. Is there a nice wide shot somewhere? Nope, there's just no pictures of him because he didn't do anything for the whole game. He just stayed there in the corner and then right at the end just teleported into enemy territory with the Nidus path, just to make sure I got my grand strategy. So not many pictures of that round at all. So a nice juicy win in that round, and the way it's scored, let me see, that works out as a 17-3 win in tournament points terms, because it's the old 20-0 system. You can see I was able to build up a lead early on and was able to sustain it. So what lessons am I taking from game 1? Well, Gargant's pretty damn tough. If you don't let enemies charge you when they have bonuses to charge, that's very handy. And 2 of them together, very, very scary. I didn't get to face any monsters in this game though, so I didn't use any of my particularly exciting monstrous rampages. Let's see if we can do that in round 2 in the Jaws of Gallet. So, you've got this territory here, you've got 1 objective in the centre, and 4 around there. And at the start of each battle round, player taking the second turn in that battle round can pick 1 objective on the battlefield to be swallowed by the caverns below. So you can remove an objective from the game if you're going second. So that's not generally what I want to hear, because I don't have a lot of units and I would like to keep them in one spot for the whole game if I can. Just run them onto an objective, preferably while they're fighting something, and then sit them there to defend that objective and outgrind the enemy and be worth 25 or 15 on the objective for a few turns. However, if I'm not going second, I'm not going to be able to determine which objectives disappear. So if I've got a Mega Gargant sitting in here, for instance, and that objective vanishes, I'm going to have to go and look for somewhere else to sit, which isn't very nice. And 5 objectives, it's a lot. I can't cover all of them. Well, technically I can, but not with units that are in any way powerful. And I'm up against, let me just pull up the list for this one. This is Ogre Moortribes, Thunderbellies, and the Day is Ours Grand Strategy, which means that if any of the Galatian champions are alive at the end, because I don't have any, then that would be successful. So it's going to be very, very difficult to fail that. Good evening, Zato, in the chat there. I see Bad Squiddo Games popped up as well. Anyone else is watching this live, feel free to comment along. Don't forget to like the video, obviously, unless you're some kind of heathen. So, what's in this list that I'm facing? I'll go back through my setup in a moment. We have got an Icebrow Hunter, which is this one, I think, with the crossbow. There is a Tyrant, which I guess is going to be that one. And there is a Frostlord on Stonehorn, which is this one here, which is quite scary. That is 450 points. Oh no, that's the Bloodpelt Hunter, that one. The Bloodpelt Hunter has the Tunnel Master, so he can teleport around, and I've faced someone using this before, because he can do a move at the end of my movement phase, and so he can actually use Tunnel Master at the end of my movement phase and teleport anywhere. So if I walk off an objective, he can just teleport straight onto it in my movement phase. So the Tyrant is around somewhere. I think that's the Hunter. No, that's the Bloodpelt Hunter. That's the Icebrow Hunter, I think. Then we've got Kragnos. 720 points of monster mashing goodness there, or badness, shall we say. So, the old Kragster. And yes, these snow bases are indeed very cool. This is a very, very expertly painted army here, with some very nice basing. So, we've got, other than Kragnos, there are 2 Frost Sabers, who I think start off the table. There's a couple of Mournfang there, and there are some more Mournfang over here. So that'll be the Tyrant. Is that the Tyrant, or is that one of the Hunters? You know what, all these ogre characters look the same to me. I don't know which ones. That must be the Hunter, because he's hanging out with the doggos. So that must be the Tyrant. Maybe? It's exactly 2,000 points, so I will get my Triumph against it. And for my setup, I have gone for the Kraken Eater General down here with a mini as backup, King Brod with a mini as backup, and the other Kraken Eater, the one with the Arcane Tome up here with another mini as backup. So what I'm going to do, my opponent is 3 drops as well. I think my opponent gets to choose who goes first in this game though, so I think won the roll-off for putting down the first unit. So, what I'm hoping for is that I'm just really far away from the enemy, and if they give me the first turn, I will just move on to the objectives. If they take the first turn, they're not going to be able to reach me that easily with anything of significance. So I think I'm going to get given the first turn probably, so I'm just going to dip my toe onto the objectives and score some points, leave the bait dangling out there again and see if anyone comes biting. So, on to the first round. So I just desecrate enemy lands, and I can't remember which piece of terrain it is, probably that one. I think that's technically part of enemy territory. Any terrain that even dangles into enemy territory a little bit is eligible to be used for desecration of lands, so it's just a nice easy one to do. It's not always possible to do it later against all armies. It wouldn't be too wild to do it against this army, because the only real denial of area units, there is Kragnos, who's worth about the same as a Mega Gargant, I think, on objectives. Roughly the same, just a big number. And the Frost Lord is worth a decent chunk as well. Everyone else is not that useful in that regard, so desecrating lands now just because it's easy. And I've got my Mega Gargants behind. Now, with this positioning, there is one rule that I forgot exists, and had I remembered it, I would have maybe done things differently here. So the Frost Lord on Stonehorn has an ability where he can do a pile-in move and fly over units and land somewhere else with a pile-in move, and it's potentially got a good distance on it. So had I remembered that that existed, because I have played against it before, then I would probably keep my Mega Gargants even further back from the minis, because obviously the minis can get charged, and then when he tries to pile in, if he then rolls an obscenely high number, he could then pile in into one of the Megas. So I would much rather that didn't happen, so had I remembered that was a rule that existed, I would have put my Mega Gargants further away from their minis. So, my opponent chooses Cunning Maneuver and just gets onto this objective with a Galatian Champion, so it's just easy points. It's a battle tactic I can't do. And I get an extra command point, it looks like there, with King Brod. I have a bone to pick with GW here. So, in the Sons of BEHEMAT War Scroll set, where you get all their tokens, why do giants have the smallest possible tokens on Earth? Look at the size of that for a command point. It's so teeny. What were they thinking? These are giants we're talking about here. Why do they have the smallest tokens in the game? The Caradhran Overlord and the Stormcast tokens are way bigger than those. And considering the Sons of BEHEMAT have barely any scrolls compared to the Stormcast, surely you can spend the extra bit on another row of card to make the tokens bigger. Ridiculous, look at that. Pathetic. So, the Frost Lord, Steam's in there, and he's already been, I think he's been shot a bit, the Mini Gargant, and then obviously Ogres do impact hits. So as a result of the impact hits, he ends up dead, because this one charges him as well. So he also does impact hits, because he's got the, what's it called? I don't know if he actually has a specific, oh yeah, he's got the Tusk Helm artifact. So he does impact hits in the same way that, for example, the Stormcast Annihilators do, or a lot of Ogre units do, but he's just better at it with that rule, with that artifact. So he's dead, this mini. And this one takes some wounds from the Mournfang. He's going to take more in a minute when they fight. And then to pile in, the Frost Lord rolls quite high and makes it all the way to King Brod, so he's going to be able to fight him. And I don't know how terrified I should be about that at this stage, because obviously I didn't absorb the impact hits, because this is just a pile-in move. And I put a lot of defense on Brod to see if that's going to help, but he still manages to do 16 wounds, which is a significant amount. And then back to him I do a big chunk of wounds as well. So he's obviously a bit of a trade there. They do some serious damage to each other. This guy just stays on the objective, and my opponent scores 4. So he gets the battle tactic, holds one objective, holds 2 objectives, but doesn't hold more than me, because he did not kill my mini Gargant there, so wasn't able to take this objective off me. That Gargant still has 4 wounds left, So, I'm going to be able to get into the action now. This one is going to be able to go after the Mournfang, or it's going to come down here and go for the Frostlord. This one, I don't know if I can particularly reach anything I really want to fight at this stage. The Mournfang are there, but they've got Kragnos. And Kragnos has some really good anti-monster rules, so he's obviously quite terrifying. I've also got my Mini here as well, who's okay at throwing rocks, or I might just keep him on this objective. As soon as he leaves it, the teleporting Ogre Hero can just take this objective off me if I abandon it. So, let's see what I do about this situation. Well, in fact, which turn are we in? Yes, I think that was turn 1. So on turn 2, my opponent actually gets first crack at turn 2, actually, so gets the double. So he's able to leave combat here. Obviously thinking, I've done what I came to do, I've done the damage to King Broad, now I'm just going to move away. So you can't fight me this turn, because in a straight up fight where he's not charging, obviously it's not very advantageous for him to stick around, because he won't get his impact hits. And this guy is maybe eyeing up a charge into King Broad to do some more impact hits with his Tusk or Helm. So this Gargant, this mini Gargant, is dead now. And Kragnos makes it into combat with King Broad. So, let's see how far away he was. He was all the way over there, gets to about here, and then makes the charge. So let's see if he can kill him. Yes. So, when Kragnos charges a monster, you roll 2 dice, multiply the results, and that's how many mortal wounds are dished out. Unless you roll a total of 7 with the numbers added together, in which case it does nothing. So obviously 7 is the most common number that you're going to get on 2 dice. So statistically, what is it? Is it like a quarter of results or something like that are going to equal 7? Something like that. So there are going to be times he does nothing. But on this occasion, he did 30 wounds. 30 mortal wounds on the charge. Wow, wow, wow. So King Broad, dead. I've got no more prayers now. So that means I'm not going to be able to boost my rend or movement or heal anybody. So, yeah, it's not going well. And this little guy goes into this Kraken Eater just to try and hold him up maybe for a turn, so I couldn't charge something else next turn if he lives. But he does end up getting killed anyway. And also that was the General, this one, which is the Icebrow Hunter. So in this tournament you get there's a special prize at the end for the person who kills the most generals or sacrifices the most generals. So he's dead. So it's not looking good. My opponent scores 5 for that round, and in my turn I just move my mini Gargant here in case I want to charge them. And you can see I've killed the Frostlord with my Kraken Eater here. And this Kraken Eater has come around this side and gone into Kragnos. And taken lots of wounds, dished out some wounds as well. So all in all, Kragnos is quite difficult to deal with. He's got a pretty good armor save. I don't have a huge amount of rend, only really -2 on lots of things. And if you're able to stack the saves up, it's difficult to chew through. And I don't deal mortal wounds very often. So that's what you usually want to deal with someone like Kragnos, who's got a good armor save. So it's level after the first 2 rounds, but I think I am at the disadvantage. So I've lost King Broad, who is my main utility piece, if you will, to buff up my other units. My opponent has lost a Frostlord on Stonehorn, so points for points, it's not that far off. But I think King Broad is more impactful on the game. And this guy's also heavily wounded, so he's going to die as well. So if I go first in round 3, I could turn all that round though, because if I get this guy charged into Kragnos, and then I can use the Beast Grapple on Kragnos. So one of them could grapple him, which makes them both strike last, which means I could hit him with both my Gargants before he gets to fight. So, if I go next, I'm not necessarily confident, but I'm thinking it could be something to think about there. Could kill him. And who goes next? Not me. So, it's the Ogres. They go next, win the priority, and my general is killed. Womp womp womp. And wait a minute, no, wait a minute, it was me. I haven't updated the dice. Yeah, so it was my turn. So instead of doing that, instead of getting both these guys into Kragnos and trying to kill him, so here's what happened. I chose my battle tactic, which was, let me have a look. Have I even got the card out for this one? I think I had to take an objective though. And as soon as I'd done my battle tactic and we go to heroic actions, I think Kragnos had Finest Hour dropped on him. And at that point, I thought, you know what, even if I double team him, I'm not going to kill him. Because he's going to... I think he may have already had... I don't know if he's got Mystic Shield. Are there even any spellcasters in this list? I don't recall, but he's got Finest Hour on him. So I don't think I'm going to kill him with 2 Mega Gargants when one of them's already wounded. In fact, 2 of them are wounded. One of them, at least one of them's knocked down a level or 2. So I'm just not confident at all I was going to kill him. So I decide, you know what, I'm just going to go and get points instead. So I go to that objective and kill that Mournfang. And I think that I had a battle tactic to kill an enemy unit, so that was the safest bet. So that's what I did. And there we go, so I get my points for the round. Now, obviously, this Kraken Eater could move out of combat with Kragnos. However, if I do that, then I'm giving him the opportunity to maybe redeploy onto an objective or something, or in the next turn he'll then be able to definitely charge something. Whereas if I stay here, there's a chance he might not kill my Kraken Eater. So he might get stuck here and not be able to then charge this guy who's up there. So that's what I'm going for, I think. But he does die in the end. And then in my opponent's turn, Kragnos is chasing down this guy, as you'd expect. And then we've got the Mini, who is fighting against everyone that's coming to try and take his objective off him. And this is Kragnos's charge for... It's after his charge roll. This is the roll that he does to determine how many mortal wounds he's going to drop on the monster. So, 36. Sounds reasonable. So, Kragnos deletes 2 Mega Gargants, purely with charge rolling, with mortal wounds on the charge. The Mini Gargant survives and kills a couple of things, so we're still level, but I don't really have anything left to score with now, and there's still 2 turns to go. So all that happens now is we do a priority roll for the next turn, and if I get it, I'll be able to score more points. If my opponent gets it, it's game over. And my opponent gets it. So, Mini Gargant dead, and he's just going to keep scoring for the rest of the game, and I've got no models left. So, more and more points, and I can't score anything after turn 3. So, if we go back, obviously I was talking about what I would have liked to do to Kragnos, get these 2 Gargants on him. But with King Broad dead, I didn't have the Rend to deal with him, sadly. And he was making a lot of saves. So, decided not to go in on all in on Kragnos in the end. I don't know whether on average Kragnos with Finest Hour should get taken down by 2 Mega Gargants. I don't know how many wounds are already on him. It's not that many though. One of them is already heavily diminished. So yeah, I just wasn't confident in it. He is very rough against monsters, especially when he does that outrageous multiplying dice together for instant mortal wounds. I don't know how that's a thing. That's wild. I need to get my own Kragnos. But it is kind of balanced out because previously, whenever I've seen Kragnos, when I've played as Stormcast, I always think, yep, there we go, I'll kill him in turn 1. And it's not that difficult to do with Stormcast because you can shoot mortal wounds at him, you can just drop down all your long strikes and shoot him, drop down annihilators or something near him, charge him, do mortal wounds on the charge, and then just beat him to death. So yeah, I always look at Kragnos as an easy 720 point kill when I'm playing Stormcast, because he's only got, is it like 18 wounds or something like that? It's not very high. So it's not high compared to a Gargant, should I say. So for Stormcast, I always found him really easy to deal with, but obviously Gargants have a harder time with him because they're all monsters, so he gets all his special rules against them. And on to the next game. So what I'm learning in from that game is I need to keep King Broad alive because his buffs are critical. So keep him upright and not dead so that I can keep using the prayer. Next one is in the presence of idols. So you have 3 units that are considered idol units. If they kill enemy idol units, you get a bonus point. There are also 3 objectives down the middle like so. And I'm against Stormcast, and it is almost entirely dragon list. So the old dragon spam, let's see. I'm just going to pull this list up here. So we have got, as a leader, we've got a Celestant Prime, who is not on the table right now. He is actually over there. We have got a Knight Draconis, who is 300 point hero mounted on a dragon. I think he's in here somewhere. And then there are several units of Stormdrake Guard. There's a unit of 4 and 2 units of 2. So the unit 4 is obviously very scary. They mostly have lances, which means they're very, very good on the charge. Less good when they're not charging. So here's my setup. I've got everyone protected by mini Gargants because I don't want to be charged in the first turn. And my opponent is, I think, is 1 drop. Yeah, I think they're all in Battle Regiment. So I'm not going to choose who goes first. So I think the Knight Draconis is the blue one at the back there, or purple. There's the unit of 4, a unit of 2, and a unit of 2 up there. So I pick my 3 megas as the idle units. And you can see I've put these on them to represent that. And my opponent picks the unit of 4, the unit of 2 over here, and the Knight Draconis. So not the unit of 2 up there. So what is my battle plan if we look at this overall shot here? Well, I would very much like the Knights to just charge into my Man Crushers and then get charged by the Mega Gargants. That would be a fun plan. Other than that, if I get to go first, I'm just going to dip a toe onto the objectives and say, come and get me. And then try and mash their faces in. The dragons can obviously dictate most of the fight. I do have a potentially really high threat range on my general, because obviously I can run and charge with him, so I can use a command point to auto-run, and then I get +1 to the charge as well. So he's potentially got a really long threat range, but apart from that, obviously these guys can run and charge as well, but if they just run into any of these units, they're going to get killed. So really they're just there as a screen. So we'll see. Dragons will be mostly dictating, and obviously when the Celestant Prime chooses to come down and grace us with his presence, he can drop mortal wounds on everyone, and he can auto-charge 12 at whoever he wants and deal some serious pain. So we'll see how it goes. Turn 1, my opponent chooses to go first and picks gaining momentum, kill a unit and hold more objectives than me, chooses to try and kill this guy, this Man Crusher, and easily does it with the shooting attacks. The way their shooting attacks works, it's similar to the Dracoth breath that I've used with the Stormcast, it's just more powerful. So I think it's on a 1 or a 2, it doesn't do any mortal wounds. On a 3 or a 4, it does D3. On a 5 or a 6, it does D6. So just a lot of mortal wound shooting, which obviously I don't have any defense against. So he's dead, and my opponent is on the objectives. So 5 points, but no idle units killed yet. I go eye for an eye, because I'm quite confident I can kill a unit. Now, I now look at this as a mistake, because of how it turned out, but you can see here that King Broad goes into the unit of 4 dragons on his own. Now, I was quite happy to do that. He's got so many wounds that they're not going to be able to kill him in 1 turn. And that means they're not getting their bonus to charge anybody next turn, which makes them way better with those lances. So he goes in there on his own to hold them up. Unfortunately, their Unleash Hell roll was very, very, very good. They did some obscene number of wounds to him with Unleash Hell. I'm sure it was like 20. So just really, really good. So way better than you'd expect. So he's actually not looking that healthy at the moment. And he has all that attack played on him there and kills one of them though. Up here I send both my other Mega Gargants, the 2 Kraken Eaters, into the 2 Knights, the 2 Stormdrake Guard, and kill them. So I got my battle tactic because I just had to kill that unit. So obviously I've got quite a hefty, meaty place up there. I've got, because all these guys are monsters, of course, then I've got more monstrous actions to use against them. But on the other hand, some of them specify that it has to be a monster that's not in a unit of 2 or more. So you are limited in that way when you're against monster units. So, eye for an eye, went okay. I was only able to take... should I have been able to take this objective? How many are these guys worth? Are they monsters? So they might be worth 10 each. And King Brod... Or how many are they worth, these guys? I can't remember. But because King Brod lost so many wounds, he diminishes in his amount that he's worth on the objective. So he can't take that one off them because of that. And I do take this one, obviously. Zato says, that's a very colourful army, I definitely approve. Yep, multicoloured dragons, very nice. And they are some good-looking boards as well. Yes, they're very, very nice tables at the TSN Arena. All the boards are very nicely kitted out with fancy pants, mostly 3D printed terrain. There's a lot of 3D printing machines in there, so it's very nice. So 3 points, but that'll have to do for now. My opponent wins the priority roll and chooses eye for an eye, so just wants to kill a unit, and obviously he's going to try and kill King Brod, who's already at death's door. So if I'd gone next, if I'd won the priority roll, I would say it's very, very close to being game over in my favour. If my opponent wins the priority roll, it's very close to being game over in his favour. Because if I got the priority roll here, obviously King Brod's already fighting them. 2 more Mega Gargants going into these Stormdrake Guard. They're all pretty much going to die as a result of that. So that's the big scary unit gone, and I would have not lost anything yet. And I would only have to face the Knight Draconis, these 2, and the Celestant Prime who's in the sky. So if I'd won the priority roll, suddenly that looks like an amazing tactical choice. Putting King Brod in there. So of course it means that they can't redeploy because they're already in combat with the Brodmeister. So, sad times though. Don't win the priority roll, so now Brod's going to die. And then, because he was killed by shooting, they were then able to charge into this Kraken Eater here. So obviously, it's all turned round. That was a unit of... Was that a unit of 2 that charged him there? I only see 2. So it looks like it. So my opponent does get eye for an eye, kills an idle unit with an idle unit, so gets the bonus point. That's how he's able to score 6 in that round. So obviously, the double turn, the whole priority roll was very swingy there. Could have drastically swung the other way had I won that roll. And onto my turn too. So, desecrate their lands is what I go for. So I just need to desecrate this building. So, the Kraken Eaters quite easily take out these 2 Stormdrake Guard there. So quite handily, I've got my mini Gargant onto this objective. So I'm currently holding, I think, both of them, and desecrate this piece of land. So I am chewing my way through, but I've got some more Stormdrake Guard here, the Knight Draconis and the Celestant Prime to come down still. So it could have been looking way healthier than this, but alas, it's not. So I do manage to pick up 6 points, because I did kill an idle unit as well, so I'm keeping close with the score, but my opponent is going next, as you can see, in round 3 again. So had I gone next here, so before the Celestant Prime comes down, I would fully expect to kill most of this lot with my Kraken Eaters. Should be able to survive the Unleash Hell, because there's not that many of them. And then the Celestant Prime would come down on his own, maybe, and maybe he would be the only thing left. But alas, lose out on the priority roll again. So it's not looking too healthy now, because I'm going to get shot to bits, then probably charged, and the Celestant Prime can drop down, he can drop mortal wounds, and then he can charge whoever he wants. So let's see. So all the Stormdrake Guard moving into the middle. They do some shooting damage here. So this guy's in quite a bad state now, he's the general. And Celestant Prime charges in down here, so he can fight this mini Gargant as well. And 1 Kraken Eater dead. This one's still doing okay. but doesn't do much to the Celestant Prime in combat, sadly. And I would say it's looking quite like game over at this point because I'm running out of units. So my opponent scores 4 for that round, including an idle unit, because he isn't able to take these 2 objectives off me, which is nice. So I go for gaining momentum, kill a unit, because I'm kind of running out of battle tactics already that I can actually do in this game. Going to be quite tricky. And I think I chose the Celestant Prime because it's the thing I'm fighting, and I couldn't kill it, as you see. So, yeah, because obviously King Brod is dead, so I rely on him to get extra rend. So the Celestant Prime, who can obviously use Finest Hour. So, yeah, it's tough to get through. So I just pick up the 3 points. Can't do my battle tactic. So I'm still hanging in there with the points though. Next round. Celestant Prime, I can't actually see what the number is there on that dice. But he's taken a few wounds, but not as many as this guy has. So look how many wounds I've got on me now there though. Started off with only 10. And suddenly, he's taken another 13 from the Celestant Prime. I think I failed a lot of saves there. And I used all out attack rather than defense because I wanted to kill him. So, I think my opponent... let's see. No, actually, so it looks like I'm going first in round 4 there. So I just got the 3 points. Then my opponent goes, kills the mini, kills the Kraken Eater, and that's the end. So it's just able to score lots of points towards the end and get the grand strategy. I obviously don't get mine because everyone's dead. So I effectively ended the game at turn 4 because I don't get any more turns. So no more scoring. So I'm not too wildly upset with my performance in that game. I think it was alright. I think obviously had I won one of those 2 priority roles, it could have been a vastly different game. Maybe King Brod wasn't the right one to send in there on his own, because obviously I need his buffs later in the game. So maybe I could have sent King Brod with another Gargant up here and sent one of the Krakens down here, because they're less important. Maybe. That's something to think about for next time. So the next game is the Prize of Galet. So you've got the 4 objectives, and they are activated by the player going second. In the first round, you can only pick one of the 3 on the centre line. You can't pick one near anyone's territory. So, let's see what I'm up against this time. I will just pull up their list from round 4. I am up against Skaven, and it is... We've got it's obviously they're all in that little bundle at the moment. Let's see, we've got the Vermin Lord Warbringer, which is this guy who's very good at fighting. We've got the Vermin Lord Deceiver, which is this one up here on the platform. That one is more of a spellcaster, I think. Not quite as good at fighting. There's a Grey Seer somewhere around here. There is a Master Moulder, 2 Master Moulders, and a Grey Seer. So I'm not sure which one's which because they're just little rats, and obviously I have no idea which one is which. We've got 20 Clan Rats over here, 20 Clan Rats here, and then we've got 4 Rat Ogres here and 4 Rat Ogres here. So for 280 points, with the other units on offer here, what is the main trick this army is going to try to do? Well, they've got the Soul Screen Bridge, which means that they can basically teleport units through it. They can get into whatever they want because of that. They can also teleport certain units as well, with spells, I think. One of these 2 can have some kind of teleporty shenanigans as well. So they can... It's difficult to screen them out. They can just attack where they want. And they have a spell that allows their units to fight on death. So, and they can even get it to a point where the spell allows them to fight on death twice. Now, you can only fight on death, you can only fight twice in a phase. So if you kill any of them in the shooting phase, and you're close enough, then they could fight you. And then they could fight in the combat phase, and then fight on death in the combat phase as well, is how I'm understanding it. Or if you kill them before they strike in the combat phase, then they can fight on death twice. So, Rat Ogres, for only 280 points, can maybe fight 2 or 3 times, then die, and then on a 3+, the entire unit comes back to life. So that is the main thing that I'm going to have to be concerned about in this game. So really, all I can do is try and kill the rat ogres, take whatever damage they dish out on death, and hope they don't come back. And that's about all I think I can do. So I do have less drops than my opponent though, so I will be deciding who goes first and second. So I've put some minis out over on this side. I want to go second so I can pick which objectives become active, you see. Because I want this one active, because I've got both. I've got the King Brod and a Kraken Eater there, staring at this objective. So I want them to fight over here. So that's why I choose to go second. My opponent goes for Cunning Maneuver, so just get onto an objective with a Galatian Champion, which is going to be easy. So the Vermin Lord, the really murdery one, gets some buffs on him, and then teleports into this corner. 6 inches away from me, I think. Of course, they have the faction terrain they can teleport through as well. But I've kind of got that screened out, so they can't use that at the moment. And one of my battle tactics, by the way, is destroy a piece of enemy faction terrain. So that happens on a 3+. So if you're only near one piece of enemy faction terrain, it's a 3+ to get your battle tactic, pretty much. So maybe at some point I'll use that. But the Vermin Lord Warbringer has just teleported down here, quite close to me, you'll notice. And this guy is going to go and, I think, score the battle tactic on this objective. Rat Ogres drop down out of the, or they come up out of the ground, out of this pit. So they've got a potential charge into me now. And a bit of shooting, it looks like, or spellcasting does wounds to this Kraken Eater. And then the Rat Ogres make a very nice long charge into him. So obviously when things come up or teleport, you expect some of them to fail their charges, as I have done many a time with my Stormcast Annihilators. And the Vermin Lord gets into the Mini Gargant as well. So the Ogres kick some butt. And have I got actually a picture of how much damage they did? Okay, the dice are on that side of the base, that's why. So, he does get Cunning Maneuver, and you can see the dice built up there. Because obviously I did munch these guys a bit, but they also dish out some pain and then fighting on death as well. So, this Mini Gargant takes 9 wounds. I think the other one over there is dead though. So for my first turn, I pick Wrecking Crew, so I'm going to try and destroy the enemy faction terrain, which is that. So I succeed with that, with this Gargant, because he just moves away from the Vermin Lord. And over on this side, the rats, by the way, the Rat Ogres, over here, did not come back to life, which is nice. I think there's still one left at this point, though. So one of my Gargants goes up. I'm just going back to show you. So this one goes up here. One of them has to stick around and finish off the Rat Ogres here. And another one can go and fight this guy. This guy's going in on his own into those Rat Ogres. I just want to get them out of the way early as possible, so that if they do come back, I've got more time to kill them. So, Fight on Death, I think, is on this unit. Zato says, Fight on Death ability is so difficult to handle as a close combat army. Yeah, I mean, what can you really do about that? I've had units that can do similar things. I've had access to them. There's a Stormcast subfaction that lets units fight on death, but I think I just generally forget to do it anyway. But yeah, what can you really do about that? It's weird. I can understand having like death throws and how a unit that's about to die will like lash out or maybe even explode. But I'm not sure how you'd justify a unit fighting on death twice. I'm not sure that one makes a whole lot of sense. It's a bit of a strange one. But I think this unit currently has that buff on them. And maybe not the other unit that I was fighting there, which is why I didn't take as much damage yet, possibly. Actually, yes, so they did fight on death, because you can see, look at all the dice on him there. So, let's go back. You can't actually see them all, but there is actually a line of yellow dice there. So these guys were fighting on death. So let's go back. There we go. So that is where we are now. So he's taken some damage. So this guy actually, instead of fighting over there, this guy backed away because he was so dead. Look at all those wounds from the fighting on death rats. And this guy went in and killed the final one, and then that fought on death, and look how much damage it did. 12 wounds. So one rat ogre is enough to do some serious damage on its own, let alone fighting multiple times after you kill it. So it's very powerful, that, and those rat ogre units are only 280 points. So when you combine that with those various buffs, which obviously cost points as well, but you're definitely getting a very good deal for that if you can do so many wounds to a Mega Gargant. So I got my battle tactic, and I got some objectives held, but not that many, because clan rats are very numerous, of course, so they're worth quite a bit. This guy managed to kill a few rat ogres, which was nice, but then took loads of wounds from fight on death as well, I think. I think I'm going next here in round 2. I'm going first, should I say. So I managed to kill this guy. I get my other Gargants in position up here. So I realised that I can't physically fit 2 Mega Gargants between these 2 buildings, which is kind of annoying. And I had to roll a high charge, possibly to like get over the terrain and end up like here maybe. But it's not going to be possible. So I do get more points though. Managed to desecrate enemy lands, which I think I chose this piece here, and I've got 2 Mega Gargants there. Or maybe I chose that one. My opponent in round 2 goes for eye for an eye. So if we look back here, here's the situation. I've got all my Gargants very close together. That is a threat for enemy monsters, because if they want to fight me, then there's potential for things like the slam, where this guy could probably slam an enemy monster and drop it there, which means all my Gargants can then fight it. So it's a risky time to be an enemy monster. So eye for an eye, it's going to be easy for them to kill A units probably. So the Vermin Lord is running his way up from over here, so he's not going to charge this turn. The other Vermin Lord, this is the spellcastery one, is in range to fight, but the fighty one is not going to be able to do that this turn. So there's some shooting and whatnot into this Kraken Eater, the general. So he's taken a lot of wounds. Isn't dead yet, but then gets charged by the Vermin Lord Deceiver. Now, this is where I try my slam. Obviously, if I can slam the Vermin Lord Deceiver to there, I'm going to be attacking it with 3 Mega Gargants, and it might as well just kiss its rat butt goodbye. I just need to roll 3+ to do that. And unfortunately, I do not roll 3+. So the Vermin Lord Deceiver is safe and does not get slammed. Wow, wow, wow. So Kraken Eater is almost certainly going to die now. There we go, dead. And yeah, so that's the end of the turn. So you can see that this Gargant, this mini Man-Crusher Gargant, is just running away because it's so wounded. So who's going to get priority in the next round? It's still up in the air. Who's going to win this one? Still looking close. And my opponent gets it by the look of things. So the Vermin Lord Warbringer comes over here, which is, I think it's a bit of teleporting action. And the Deceiver doesn't want to move either because it doesn't want me to redeploy either of these guys. So I think I Finest Houred King Brod, which is why he wants to teleport over here to attack this one who's not got Finest Hour on it. And he's going to desecrate this bit of land here. So obviously my opponent is going next and gets into combat with this guy, so all out defense on him. But the Vermin Lord Warbringer is pretty nasty. And there's a Rat Ogre that went in as well. I think this final Rat Ogre kind of wants to die, because then on a 3+ a whole new unit can come back, with 4 of them in it. So we are down a Gargant, and the lands are desecrated by these rats. So 5 points there. It's not looking good. We've got King Brod left though. He's wounded, but he's still in there. He manages to kill this Rat Ogre, and then a fresh unit comes back on a 3-up. So yeah, look at all those wounds he took as well during the turn. So he's almost certainly going to die. I had to do that though because I needed the eye for an eye battle tactic to get more points. So I had to kill that rat ogre. I then get first crack in the next round, so I go for the splat, which is kill an enemy hero with throwing rocks. At this point I'm struggling to find battle tactics I can actually do. So all I have to do is just try and throw a rock at an enemy hero and kill it. So it's a bit of a long shot because I've only got this guy, I think, that can maybe do it. So probably not going to happen. And yeah, not much going on here. And okay, yeah, so one thing I haven't pointed out yet. The Vermin Lord has the ability to just move away from combat if it wants to, instead of fighting. And it still had a fight first effect on this one, on the Deceiver. So the Deceiver was able to say, you know what, I'm fighting first, and I would rather not fight you, so I'm just going to move away from you and wait till next turn when everyone will be able to kill you. So, if you've seen my reports before, you'll have noticed that I generally don't like when things can move out of combat. It's happened a lot with the Sylvaneth. They've got like a tree that can teleport out of combat, I think. And when I played against, was it Manfred, who I believe can't do it anymore, but used to be able to just fly away if you reach him. So if you charge him, he can then just fly away instead of staying around and fighting. And it falls under the bracket of rules where the kind of rules I do complain about are the ones where instead of doing something cool yourself, you deny the enemy their chance to do something cool. So I like abilities that let you like gain extra distance, or fight better, or even like pick up an enemy unit and slam them into a different place is just a cool thing visually. So for the Gargants, that's a nice one. However, abilities like units coming back to life and looking at you and meaning that you can now no longer fight anything, those kind of abilities I'm not a fan of. And there's obviously too much of things coming back to life in Age of Sigmar and getting their wounds back. Too many ways to recover. So I don't think Rally should really exist except in some form. Obviously for undead they should be able to come back to life because that's their thing. Demons should be able to be summoned onto the table, obviously. I don't have a problem with like clan rats, more clan rats emerging from the sewers to join the pack when things aren't going too badly. And obviously they're brave enough to do so because the situation isn't as dire. And healing as well, there's an awful lot of ways for people to just get models back through abilities. It's Sylvaneth again, isn't it, who have that ability where they can just be near a unit and automatically a model comes back to life. And for Stormcast, you've got Yndrasta that can do something like that as well. And then I've obviously played with Bastion, who if he kills a model, gets all his wounds back in the phase, which is just really annoying for opponents. I would rather they just give Bastion loads of wounds instead. So like fighting Mega Gargants, you feel like you're making progress. Because look at this, you're building up all these wounds on something, it's tangible progress you're making there. If a Mega Gargant just had 10 wounds, but if you don't kill it all in one round, it gets all its wounds back. I think that would feel a lot worse to play against. Maybe 10 isn't the best example because you could quite easily do 10. So let's say you have to do 15 wounds to a Mega Gargant in a round and it dies, or if you only do 14, it's back to full health again. I think that would be way more annoying to play against. And it would be more frustrating, rather than just slowly chipping away. You can see your progress. There's very limited ways for the Mega Gargants to get their wounds back. Heroic Recovery is not reliable for them, because their bravery isn't that high. King Brod is about the only one. And then his Prayer can only heal D3 wounds to all the units at once. So if there's a heavily injured one, you're not going to get a lot of wounds back on it. So in general, Mega Gargants seem to have less feel-bad rules than some of the other factions. I would argue that Monstrous Rampage, like Raw, is maybe a feel-bad rule because you're just denying your opponent the ability to do something rather than doing something yourself. So Raw probably falls under that category. But some of the other monstrous actions are just kind of fun, like the Slam and the Beast Grapple. I think thematically they're quite flavourful, so I forgive those. It's like with Undead coming back to life. even though it's a rule I don't really like, models coming back, it makes sense for undead, they should have it. Anyway, I think I'll have this kind of rant in every video, because all armies have some rules that I don't like, including the ones I use. So I don't succeed with the splat, so just the 2 points for that round. My opponent goes for this one's mine, so the general is going to pick, obviously, King Brod to finish off with the Warbringer who's down here. And Steam's in there, he's got all out defense, but it doesn't help. He's dead. The king is dead. And then I'm just down to this mini Gargant who's straddling 2 areas. And yeah, so the objectives becoming active during this game was mostly irrelevant, because I think this one became active quite early on as well. But for the most part, it was just not looking good for me, because I was losing so many wounds to the Rat Ogres, and then one of the units came back to life, and I wasn't able to get any value out of doing that damage to the Rat Ogres, and they were getting lots of value for the wounds they were doing. So you can see it just, my point scoring started trailing off, and my opponent's was steadily getting more consistent throughout. And then obviously I don't score any after that. My opponent keeps scoring and gets the grand strategy towards the end, so it just racks up more points. So everybody's dead, and yeah, during the lunch break on day 2, between rounds 4 and 5, we put all our armies out on display so they could be judged for the coolest army award. Obviously, bringing a massive army of heavily converted tentacle giants, then I'm fairly confident that I'm in with a chance for the coolest army award. So let's have a look at them all. So I took a few nice pictures of mine, and obviously I got lots of questions and compliments on this army because it's the first time I've taken it to an Age of Sigmar event, so people won't have seen it before, asking me about where the models came from and which bits are used and painting techniques and so on. We've got the Skaven that I just faced. We have got some orcs with Kragnos. There he is. There's his standard head, not the different head that the Kragnos I faced earlier uses. We've got the Grave Lords that I faced in the first round. We have got more Skaven. This is a different list though. That doesn't have any Rat Ogres, but it does have these guys in there, and Thanquol and Bone Ripper. So this is a very nicely painted army as well. We have got some... what are they? Are they Beasts of Chaos? It must be. These are Minotaurs, aren't they? Let me have a look. I'm going to see if there are Beasts of Chaos in the... Don't see any Beasts of Chaos on here, so I'm not entirely sure what these guys actually are. Let me see. These are... I can see the player lists here actually. Oh, these are Bone Splitters. Okay, they must be different models though. So pretty cool though. Then we've got the ogres that I faced earlier. Nope, that's a lie. These are not the ogres that I faced. This is different ogres. Still with Kragnos though. He's quite popular right now, it seems. We have got some nice Slanesh with good old Sigvald there. Zato says, your army is very unique and looks great. It's understandable it would get a lot of attention. But yeah, especially the first time people see it. Zato says, I think rally is a strange rule as well. It just feels so weird when they started adding 4+ rally. Yeah, I don't know why it exists. All it does is slow the game down, because things die and then they come back. It's like playing vampire counts in old Warhammer Fantasy, where you would lose 10 zombies, then bring 11 back to life, then lose another 15, then bring 8 back to life, so you spent half the game removing zombies and putting zombies back on again. Now, it does make sense for undead to be able to do that, but I think there's a better way of doing it, rather than just picking up and putting back individual models over and over and over and over again. So if someone in the Age of Sigmar design studio, hopefully for next edition they're coming up with a way of having a rule like that for Undead that works and it's smooth, but not everyone can just rally back a troll or even a fulminator, because I've rallied back really powerful models before and it doesn't make any sense. We've got some nice Stormcast here with Karazai. I'm not sure what that model is, but it's obviously supposed to be Karazai. Look how red it is. Celestant Prime. And some Praetors, who you don't see very often. So I think they are Karazai's bodyguard, basically. These are the ogres that I faced, the really nice ice ones. Now, I took some close-up pictures of these ones here. And I voted for this army as the coolest army, by the way. Because it is very, very cool. They're very nice snow bases. Lots of effort's obviously gone into the snow speckled all over them. Very nice. And the paintwork is very nicely done as well. So out of all the armies, I decided this one was the coolest. So it got my vote. Then we've got some Ossiarch Bone Reapers. The Stormcast Dragons. And this is... what are these guys? It looks very chaosy, doesn't it? So I think this is also Slaves to Darkness, like the other one that I saw. Yeah, so those will be Chaos Knights, won't they? Yeah, pretty sure this is Slaves to Darkness. Then we've got some... this will be the... where is it? They're definitely some kind of goblins, aren't they? Yeah, because they've got all the squigs. They've got trolls. Yeah, they've got the bad moon. So, very nice. And I got a couple of close-ups here, because these are pretty cool as well. On to the next round then. So, I'll let you know at the end how the coolest army award went. Final round. Ours for the taking. So, deployment is like that. You've got 3 objectives. One is your home objective, one is the enemy home objective, and the centre objective. You get 1 victory point for holding your own home objective, 1 victory point for holding the centre objective, 1 victory point if you hold the centre objective with a Galatian champion, so obviously I won't be eligible for that, and 2 victory points if you hold the enemy home objective. So there are lots of points available during this game, especially if you've got Galatian champions, which I don't. So, in the final round, what am I up against? Let me just pull up the list here. So it's Skaven again, but it's a different army. It is... let's see, we've got Thanquol and Bone Ripper, first of all. And he's right there. So very, very scary. There is a Claw Lord, who is in amongst all these clan rats and whatnot. There is a Warlock Engineer in there somewhere as well. So let's see if I can find them. Is that the Claw Lord there? That might be the Engineer there. And then we've got 2 lots of 20 clan rats. So there's 20, there's 20. And this big unit here, this is 30 Storm Vermin, which is incredibly scary. 390 points. They can get some decent buffs on them, and they do hit quite well. So not quite as scary as 2 lots of rat ogres fighting twice on death, but obviously these guys can be made to fight on death as well, because it's Skaven, so they have access to that spell as well. It's the Death Frenzy spell. Then there are... let's see what else, because there's some stuff that's not on the table. I think it's just 6 Storm Fiends. So those are like the even bigger rat ogres with all the guns on them. And that unit is 640 points, so that's the most expensive thing in the game in this particular battle. And there is also... let's see, so there's Endless Spell. There is Lauchon the Soul Seeker, which is the boat that moves a hero. So that's quite nasty for mobility. So to explain my setup and my plan here, this guy, all he's doing is guarding my home objective, and just off camera in the bottom right, there is one of these Skaven pits that's been placed. So I just want to make sure no one can come up through that. So he's going to stay here for the whole game. That's the plan. I've got my Kraken Eater General and King Brod together. So that's the toughest combo I can get, and they're close enough so that I definitely have the charge bonus on King Brod, the +1 to charge. So these two are going to tear down the middle and try and just punch a hole straight through the enemy, get rid of that massive block of Storm Vermin. Those two together should be able to do it. This guy is going to move into the middle, onto this objective, and I would like to be able to kick this objective back into my territory, so that it's a smaller area for me to defend, and also I can use the battle tactic, where if I kick an objective that's outside my territory into my territory, then I secure that battle tactic. So I want to be able to kick this one further towards me. That's the plan. These, the vermin, storm fiends, should I say, they can actually teleport in, kind of, like come up from underground, I think. So it's going to be difficult to deal with them. I've got one mini Gargant out here on its own, obviously kind of bait anything that comes over here. I can send Gargants over there maybe if they do. But most likely I'm going to be fighting clan rats with it, because I don't think Thanquol is going to waste his time fighting mini Gargants. So, let's see how it goes. Let's dive in. So, my opponent has the Battle Regiment, so it's just one drop, so he's going to be deciding who goes first. And chooses to go first. Surrounds this area with clan rats so that they can maybe go through it at some point. Brings down all the Storm Fiends. And starts trying to gun down this mini Gargant. Thanquol zaps himself over there as well. And the battle tactic chosen in this turn was to get a hero onto this objective. However, my opponent then, in the middle of the turn, decided actually I would rather not do that because I want to keep the hero alive. So decided to abandon the battle tactic. Now, obviously, if you're planning out your turn, then you don't want to obviously abandon the battle tactic midway through the turn. But if you do have a change of heart and you decide it's a higher priority to keep this guy alive and just accept, okay, it was probably a mistake picking that battle tactic. I'm just going to cut my losses there. I'm not going to double down on it. And then, just for the sake of the battle tactic, get this hero killed when I need him for the entire game. So I can understand changing your mind in the middle of the turn. And yeah, so obviously you have to sacrifice that battle tactic though. So that's going to be gone. That battle tactic, that's going to be failed. And so these Storm Fiends, it's an interesting one because obviously they can drop in anywhere they want. However, if they drop in where you might be tempted to drop them in, like, I don't know, in this corner maybe, or in front of my Gargants and then start blasting them, they're almost certainly going to get murdered. They're going to get hit by 3 Mega Gargants potentially if they come down anywhere near here. In this corner they're going to have 2 of them, and mini one in first probably to absorb Unleash Hell. So, yeah, I don't know if they have to come in turn 1. I don't know if they can stay underground for longer than that. I assume they can. But if they can, I would have been tempted not to put them down yet. Because once my Gargants are tied up fighting something else, that's when you don't have to worry about facing them all at once. So if they can stay down there longer, I would have held off on that for now, because he's not the most exciting of targets. So they do kill him, of course, because obviously they've got a billion gun barrels there. So I've lost 1 mini in turn 1. My opponent only scores 1 point, though, for holding the home objective, choosing not to go after this one. So, had he decided to actually go ahead with the original plan and jump onto this objective, would have scored the battle tactic, would have held the middle objective with a Galatian champion, so would have got 5 points for the round instead of 1. So losing out on 4 points there, but keeping the hero alive. So we'll see if it's worth that. I decided to desecrate this piece of enemy land because it's just an easy one for turn 1. And obviously you can see I've gone all in with the Gargants. This one's gone onto the objective, like I said, so you can start kicking it at some point, otherwise you can stand there guarding it. These two went for the Storm Vermin. Now, this was a risk because these 2 Gargants do not fit through this gap. So, the Storm Vermin redeployed. Had they redeployed 6 inches back, this guy wouldn't have been able to fit in there. So thankfully they only redeployed 3 inches, which meant that I was able to get both the Gargants in range to fight. Obviously it would have been bad if I'd only been able to send one of them in there. I used Finest Hour on this one, and put Mystic Shield on him, and then I used All Out Defense on King Brod, because I did not want to absorb damage in retaliation for that, because they also had Fight on Death on them as well. So also before the game, my opponent very kindly gifted me this D20, which apparently he was offering to his opponents as a wound counter. So that's very kind. So rather than piling up loads of D6s, and then after the success of using this D20, I then decided when I got back to go through my dice collection and find other D20s that I can use to mark the wounds on my Mega Gargants. So I did find I've got a good few as well, so I should have enough for the whole army. Although King Brod himself does need 2 D20s to keep track of all his wounds, because he's such a beast. So you can see lots of the Storm Vermin have been killed on the initial hit, because obviously both of them got there. And King Brod has taken 8 wounds. Now, it made sense to allocate more wounds to him, because he only had All-Out Defense, not Finest Hour and Mystic Shield. So, it does make sense to put more of the attacks on him, on the Fight on Death. And Storm Vermin deaths are piling up. I think one of the guys had to fight here. They can fight in multiple ranks, because they are Galatian... I know it's not part of the Galatian veteran. You have to be in a battalion to get that now, don't you? Which lets you fight in more ranks. But I think they can still. Is it because they're battle line they can fight in 2 ranks? There's something going on that allowed them to fight in more than 1 rank apparently. So lots of them targeting King Brod because he was the easier to hit. But he's only taken 11 wounds, so I think that's looking pretty good there so far. So I do get 4 points because I hold my home objective, I hold the middle objective, and I got my battle tactic. Enemy home objective is next on the agenda. So what am I anticipating happens here? Because the rest of the Storm Vermin run away, because you can't use Inspiring Presence when you're within 3 inches of one of the Mega Gargants. So that's a really good rule they have. Some armies have different ways of avoiding Battle Shock though, so it won't stop those, but it will stop Inspiring Presence. So all the Storm Vermin are gone. There is a little hero behind the Storm Vermin who's a bit of a nuisance, because obviously I can't finish up within 3 inches of him with moving, so that might limit me getting around here a bit. So if I don't go next, what's likely to happen? Well, these Storm Fiends are going to move in here, probably, and then start blasting away. And the Clan Rats can form like a screen in front of them, perhaps. So they can set up a little defensive position. Thankwall and Bone Ripper could get over here quite easily with the boat, Lauchon's boat, and then join in as well. If I go next, I'm going to try and pray with King Brod and get extra movement so that I can manoeuvre around. These Storm Vermin aren't actually there, they're dead. So I can manoeuvre around here and get King Brod, who will be... I'll probably put Finest Hour or Mystic Shield on him, probably. And then I'll try and get him over here and charge into this flank here. I'm going to send the Mini Gargant down there so that he can charge in. And the extra movement's going to be very useful there because obviously he's got to get around this terrain. He'll charge in and try and eat the Unleash Hell from the Storm Fiends first so that King Brod can get in untouched by gunfire and start just munching them. And then this guy can eat the hero that's behind King Brod there. And this guy's just going to camp on the objective. And then I think if I can succeed with that plan, that's looking very healthy. So I do actually get to go next. I get first go at turn 2, and I choose Gaining Momentum, and I pick this guy. So I think is that the Engineer? It's a little Skaven hero anyway. But this guy stays in the middle. And you can see here, I got the Mini Gargant in, but when I was moving around, the Storm Fiends actually decided they're going to redeploy, which is probably a good idea because I can't then make him eat the Unleash Hell. And King Brod did manage to get in, killed the little hero that was here, which is the one that I needed to kill for my Gaining Momentum battle tactic. And then he was able to, with his pile in, he was able to reach these guys. So he was able to put attacks on them without having to worry about too much Unleash Hell. I think they were only able to Unleash Hell with maybe 1 or 2 models because they were further away. So that's okay. And then this guy is fighting the little hero there. So he's going to eat him in a minute. The Mini Gargant is against Clan Rats, so it's the perfect enemy of him to face. So he's able to stuff one into his pants because they're only tiny. So that's easy to do. And then I all-out defense King Brod because I just want to keep him alive. I think I chose not to Finest Hour him this time. I chose to stick with all-out defense, and then next turn I'm going to try and possibly Finest Hour him when he's surrounded by all this madness. So it's looking very healthy. I've killed that hero, done some wounds to them, so they're locked down now, so they can only shoot at King Brod. And I've got the fight where I want it to be, on the enemy home objective, because I've got 2 Mega Gargants on there, so I now own the enemy home objective. That's going to be 2 points. And they are really nowhere near getting to my home objective. So as long as the fight's taking place here, when I've got all these guys that are worth so many on the objectives, it's going to be a good time for me. I've got this guy untouched as well, guarding the middle. So, into... oh yeah, so that's, I think, Battle Shock makes more Clan Rats run away, but not too many. There's still a few left. On to the next turn. So my opponent going next is going to choose to desecrate my lands. Now, he's already running low on battle tactics that can be accomplished here. Because I've got such domination of the board, and the objectives specifically, that some of them are really difficult to accomplish. So we do determine that he can desecrate this, though, because he's got a Tunnel Master on one of his heroes, which is the... let's have a look at the list and see which one that is. That is the... Warlock Engineer. So the one I killed must have been the Claw Lord, was it? Yeah, so the Tunnel Master is going to try and desecrate this piece of land here, which is just an auto-complete. And I think it's him. So he's just going to teleport out in a minute. And that also leaves more space for the Storm Fiends to fight as well. Thankwall and Bone Ripper go through the... did they emerge from that? Or is it... I think it's the boat he takes, actually, to end up over here. And he wants to charge King Brod. So you can see I've got Finest Hour on him. So what I do, I redeploy the Kraken Eater with a command point here, and I move up there. So I'm now in range, so that if he charges King Brod, I can potentially fight him. But what I actually want to do, to keep King Brod alive, I want this guy to suplex or slam Thankwall over here instead, so he can't fight King Brod at all. So that would be on a 3-up, I can do that. So that's the benefit of having these Gargants together. You can either slam an enemy into the other Gargants, so they can all fight him, or you can slam an enemy away from a Gargant that you don't want the enemy to fight. So it's a really good Monstrous Rampage, that as long as you can roll a 3+, of course. So the lands are desecrated, nice blurry photo there. So all-out defense and Finest Hour on King Brod. So he is still taking damage though. He's actually moved on to some more dice now from the D20. And Thankwall gets in there. And I actually fail the 3-up roll to slam Thankwall over here again. So I haven't managed to suplex anyone yet. Failed it twice. And taking more wounds on King Brod, but he's not dead yet. He's hanging in there. And then my 2 Mega Gargants punch Thankwall and Bone Ripper in the face, who did cast the Fight on Death spell on himself before coming over here. So he obviously knew that there was a chance Thankwall was going to get killed. And if you were Bone Ripper, I was saying to my opponent, if you were Bone Ripper and you heard Thankwall on your back, kind of doing the motions to cast the Death Frenzy spell, you think, wait a minute, that's a spell that only works if we die. What have you got planned for us, buddy? So I don't think Bone Ripper was going to be too thrilled about that. But anyway, he gets killed, fights on death, does more wounds. You can see King Brod has taken lots of wounds now. So he's taken 20 there, and there's another 18, so he's only got 2 left. So he's just hanging on. And that land is desecrated, so my opponent does get a couple of points for that, but doesn't hold any objectives. My next turn, I go next in round 3. So I go and smash up this bit of enemy faction terrain as my battle tactic. And I'm just going to be kicking enemy butts. So King Brod retreats from the fight because he's so heavily wounded, and the Kraken Eater takes his place in there and starts fighting in his stead. And this guy's just chilling out in the middle objective. So I score loads of points again because I'm holding the enemy home objective. And I get my battle tactic. So in round 3, my opponent's turn, these guys are just going to keep crunching away trying to kill the Kraken Eater. They have to shoot him now, and he's got lots of health. He's so close they have to shoot one of these two. They can't shoot King Brod. And they're not able to do anything really in turn 3. They rack up a few wounds maybe, but not a lot. In my turn 4, I pick this one's mine with this unit. So actually what happened was, at this point we realised it was going to be game over. And there were a few games still going on, but some people had finished. So we decided that instead of actually going through the motions of doing everything in fine detail, we're just going to talk through mostly what we're going to do and then do the important dice rolls like the combat. Because the game's pretty much decided at this point. So once we decided that I was going to use this one's mine, we decided to go through the combats from the previous turn to see how many wounds we would have taken to make sure it's all correct. And I end up with 4 points because I can't finish off that unit. I'm actually running out of battle tactics I can do. So this guy kicks the objective near to my territory, so in the next turn I'll be able to use the, I think it's called It's Mine or something like that, the battle tactic to kick the objective wholly into my territory. So I'll be able to do that quite easily next turn. So just 4 for this round. And the Storm Fiends do finish off the Kraken Eater. So this situation, the only way they could score points in this round is to hold their home objective and get 1 point. The only way for them to do that is to kill the Kraken Eater with shooting and then charge King Brod and finish him off. That's the only way they can take this objective off me. Unfortunately for them, when they're rolling their attacks against the Kraken Eater, shooting attacks, I had 3 saves to make at -3 with all-out defense. So I was on 6+ to save, and I needed to succeed with all 3 of them to not die. And I rolled a 666. So by this point there were a couple of other people round the table as well, and we all had a good old laugh about that. The Sons of BEHEMAT official dice with the big foot on it, 3 of those came up with a 6. So the Kraken Eater survived and had to be killed in combat instead, which meant that they couldn't then go after King Brod, so they can't take this objective. So that denies them a point. So it's not looking very healthy for the Skaven. And then they do get to go first in turn 5, which means they're going to score this point again. Or they'll score it for the first time because obviously they can shoot off King Brod now. So they do score that, so they get the 1 point there. And then in my turn 5, I just kick this objective into my territory. And yeah, that's an easy battle tactic. Score that, score both of these, get another 4 points. And neither of us get our grand strategy. I think we both had take what's theirs, but neither of us have any units in enemy territory. I didn't want this guy to leave because he's obviously guarding the exit to the tunnel, which even though I've demolished it, can still be used as an exit, the one in the bottom right. So anyone could go through it and pop up down here. So he was guarding it, so he didn't want to move. This guy was kicking this objective around, so he didn't want to move, and everyone else was dead. So no grand strategy, but it's still a healthy winning margin. And that actually resulted in a 20-0 win. Which may be the only time I've ever done that in Age of Sigmar, because usually I'm playing Stormcast, who are really good at scoring, but really bad at stopping the enemy from scoring. At least the way I play them. So I don't usually have really big margins of victory. So it might be the first 20-0 I've had in this game. So, 2 wins, 3 losses. First time playing the Sons of BEHEMAT. If I look at the placings, there were 16 players, and I ended up 12th, which is fine. I'm quite happy with 2 wins from that. And I'm just going to quickly zoop back through some of these pictures and get back to the armies that were displayed during the lunchtime so I can talk about the coolest army award. So, my army, I'm sure it did receive some votes because some people pretty much told me they were going to vote for mine because they found it very cool. But the actual winner was the one I voted for, which apparently received 8 votes. I don't know how many votes others received, but this one, which I voted for, was the winner. So I'm going to say it's definitely, out of all of them, when you look at the detail on there, and you look at the snow effect, which is done in a much more realistic way than you sometimes see. If I was going to pick one of these armies from this tournament to go in a display cabinet, I think it would be this one, which is why I voted for it. Because the paintwork is obviously very nice, and it's just a very good theme. Very nice with the ice bases with the snow on it. Just very cool all around. So, not going to argue with that, because I voted for it. So, that's fine by me. Which other armies were particularly cool, did I think? Obviously, multicoloured Stormcast dragons are cool. But with them all being dragons, you're limited to mostly painting scaly wings with them. So there's a limit. And I thought these goblins were very cool. I thought there was at least another army or two. These are pretty cool as well, these Stormcast, the yellow ones. These ogres were actually very nice as well. And this army was good. This Skaven army with Thanquol, very, very nice. This would have been, I think maybe this army would have been my second choice for coolest army, because I really like the paintwork on these and the basing with the slime. I think that's very nice, so maybe they would have been the second choice, but you only had one vote. So, yep, some cool Kragnosses as well. So there we go, very pleased with the first outing for the Sons of BEHEMAT, the tentacle dudes. I've been looking at the war scrolls for the units I didn't select this time, and I've put together some different lists I might try in the future. I'm going to make a 4th Mega Gargant at some point, and the units I haven't used, such as the Gatebreaker, which has some really cool abilities, and the War Stomper, which has some pretty snazzy skills as well. The War Stomper is the cheapest one in points, so that does make it quite useful if you're struggling for points while building a list. The Mini Gargants, I could try running them as a unit of 3. I did enjoy having the 3 big Gargants. The little ones, they didn't really feel significant, they didn't feel like a threat to the enemy. And that's 450 points invested in things that I don't think are threatening the enemy. So I'm not sure about having 3 of them. I do like them for just sitting on objectives, because you can't do that with a Mega Gargant if it's going to be miles away from the fight and all it is stopping the enemy teleporting, for example. You don't want to spend a whole Mega Gargant sitting back there doing that. So you can make a list that has 4 Mega Gargants and a Mini. But I think the only way you can do that is if you take mostly War Stompers. Yeah, so if you take, for example, 3 War Stompers and a Kraken Eater, for instance, you could then fit a Mini Gargant in there as well. But that means you're not taking King Brod, and I really like him. I think that prayer effect he can give off is very, very useful. Because there were times after he died at this event where I was really missing that extra rend he could have provided. But if you're not taking him, you do have options for dealing damage, because the War Stomper can get extra attacks against massed units, and you can, with the Gatebreaker, I think he's the one who can trade in all his attacks for a 4+ dice roll to do 4d6 mortal wounds. So if you take 1 or more of those, that is really scary. He's just over 500 points, I think he's 520. So that is a really scary ability there, that sometimes it's just going to shred Kragnos, and sometimes it's going to do absolutely nothing. So I would be interested in trying Gatebreakers. So I'm going to rejig the list a bit for next time probably, see what I can come up with, and try and get that 4th Gargant done. If I look at my event calendar to see what's coming up next, Just got my little events notebook here. Let me see. So, I have another Age of Sigmar tournament lined up, also at the TSN Arena, at the end of this month. So that is the next event of any description at the moment. I'm still on the lookout for events possibly in June or July or August. I'm signed up for some. I've got a Dead Zone event that I am running in Nottingham on the 17th of June. So if anyone's watched all the way to the end of this video and you're interested in playing Dead Zone, then check out my Facebook group in the description, and you should find a link in there to my Dead Zone tournament, which is called Code Orange. So that's going to be fun to run an event for the first time. That's going to be at the Lead Belt Gaming Arena in Nottingham. So that's going to be exciting. And I've got another Age of Sigmar event in July lined up, which is also at TSN Arena. I've got 2 Kings of War events quite close together. There's Battle Masters and BritCon. So one's the end of July, one's early August. There's Clash of Kings for Kings of War in September. And then in October and across October and November, I've got 2 Age of Sigmar events, which are also at TSN Arena, and 1 Kings of War event. So obviously keeping my eyes peeled for more tournaments all the time. There are some gaps in this calendar to fill in. So if you know of any events within striking distance of Nottingham, preferably, that are coming up over the next few months, then let me know. So, let's see. Anything else to touch on from this army? I suppose I can talk about whether they were fun to play. So, Stormcast, I've always enjoyed playing them. They're perfectly fun for me. But I really enjoyed not having much of a movement phase. Running this army, it was really quick to play, because there's not a lot of positioning shenanigans you can do with them, because it's just 6 models. Their bases are really big, you plonk them somewhere and then you fight. And the nuance is in how you synergize their auras and whatnot, what bonuses you've given them, which prayer you're going to use, and your monstrous rampages, whether you can pick up and slam an enemy and put them into a new position so your other Gargants can fight them, how many Gargants you commit to each side of the table. So there is some nuance there, but it's much more straightforward and fast to play. So I did have a lot of fun actually, and I like to think that my opponents had fun as well, because like I said, when I'm fighting Gargants, it does feel fun racking up the wounds on them, and mostly those wounds aren't coming back. So I think it does provide a good experience for both players in that regard. There are some occasions where armies that don't deal mass damage, for example, sometimes they can see a Mega Gargant list and they know that they're really going to struggle to take them off, because they just can't do that many wounds. So there will be armies that do inherently struggle against Mega Gargants, so maybe they don't have the most fun time against it. But you could say that about any army really, there's always going to be something that is like a hard counter to it. Kragnos is obviously the tough, really nasty counter to this list. What else would be really good against this list of mine? Any kind of shooting probably is going to be good, because obviously if you come into fighting range, that's when you start getting eaten. So I didn't face a great deal of shooting at this event. What else? When I was facing Mega Gargants with Stormcast, I always was grateful if I had Bastion in there, especially if it was King Brod, so I could just throw 40 dice at him each turn. That was always hilarious. But in general, it was fun to play. It was fun hearing the nice feedback about my army as well. About all the obvious time that's gone into it, the conversions and the building and the painting. And yeah, I've got the little signposts on their bases magnetised, so I can take off where it says Kraken and replace that with the name of whichever unit is being used. So if I want to use a gate breaker, I've got one that says, I think it just says gate on it. So I could put gate there, I could put stomp on that one, for instance. So I can run them as all the different giants. And the model I've got that I'm going to make into my 4th Mega Gargant is... It is a Fenris Games, I think it's like a what's it called? Is it called Plague Giant? Something like that. But it's already quite gribbly, so the one thing I'm struggling with that is figuring out how to gribble it up even more. And I've just noticed that you can see someone eating a sandwich in the top corner of this picture. So look at that, exclusive sandwich eating on YouTube. So thanks to anyone that's made it all the way through this video. It's less than 2 hours actually, so that's not bad. For 5 games of in-depth tactical insight and knowledge being imparted upon you. So why not like the video? Why not subscribe? Why not check out all the links in the description, including the social media shenanigans such as Facebook, Discord, and Twitter? And why not pledge all your life savings to my Patreon? Probably not all your life savings, because I don't want to be responsible for any kind of homelessness surge, but a significant chunk, I would say. If you think about the value that's brought into your life via this channel, I think you'll find that's worth at least 50% of your income, surely. So why not go and pledge all of it right now on Patreon? Which currently, let's see, how much am I raking in at the moment on Patreon? I think it's like $40 a month right now. Something like that. So that about covers, let's see, it definitely doesn't cover an Age of Sigmar tournament ticket, because those are more expensive than other game systems generally. With it being a full weekend, typically for Age of Sigmar. Kings of War has a lot more one-day events, so they tend to be cheaper. Dead Zone events as well. So, yeah, it probably covers about half an Age of Sigmar event ticket at the moment, the Patreon. And there is the good old YouTube revenue as well, which trickles in with a few pence now and then. So, yeah, I think it's time to wrap this video up. It's been going on long enough. So let me know what you thought of my army. Let me know what you thought of the other armies I faced, the other lists. If you've got any tips for me on using this army, if you've got any tips for any of the armies that I faced. If you learned anything from this video, let me know as well. Any red hot sizzling tactical tips that you may have picked up. And yeah, keep your eyes peeled for more red hot juicy sizzling, sizzlicious, tingling, mouth-watering, finger-licking good, dishlicious content in the very near future. Okay, I think at this point all that remains to be said is good night out there, whatever you are.